Okay. Just do a little self-introduction about your position in
Sure.
the Students Center and what you do.
Sure. My name is Beth. I work as the Volunteer Resource Center Coordinator at MSU, which is Montclair State. I'm an AmeriCorps member, so this is my full-time placement at MSU. I started in September, and I will end in September 2013, which is not that long from now, so it's kind of sad. But so basically what I do as part of the coordinator for the center is I connect students, faculty, staff, and alumni with different impactful community service opportunities. So those include anything ongoing, short-term, one-time, anything like that. So my goal as being the coordinator for this office is to really connect people with meaningful service projects. I don't want it to necessarily just be service to do it. I want it to really have an impact on the community with whom you're working. So that's what I do in the center.
Okay. And what was the most impactful moment from our MLK Day of Service to you?
Would you like me to go back and explain MLK Day?
Sure.
So also part of being the coordinator is I get to work with a lot of the Bonner students at MSU, and the Bonner leaders are exceptional volunteers, and we call them that because they're part of the AmeriCorps program and they complete 300 service hours, or a minimum of 300 for their term of service, which is a year as well. So what we did for MLK Day, which was January 21st, we arranged a project, Crystal Woolston and I, and Crystal is the advisor for both the ECO, which is my program, and the Bonner AmeriCorps programs. We arranged a project in Seabright where we got to engage in a community cleanup. So there were different projects that day. We started out at Borough Hall. The majority of us we were clearing out rocks from the back of Borough Hall where the parking lot is, and sand, basically all the sand rocks that had been swept in from standing all the waves. And then we had different side projects where different students, different Bonners I should say, got to go out and work in different homes, whether that was removing insulation or moving furniture or just kind of helping out around the house as they were needed, because a lot of these houses were severely damaged by the water, and the sand left behind it was kind of bad. So that's what we did for MLK Day. So I think the most meaningful part of it was really getting to see the students' reactions to, especially the projects that I wasn't part of. I didn't really get to speak to those students, and I only heard about it later. But I got to see pictures, especially Crystal took a ton of pictures, and it was really great to see the impact that those students had on those individual families. Like what we were doing in the parking lot was still meaningful because it was still impactful work. But it's always nice to see your smaller impact, because it always seems that much bigger when you're working with like a group of people or a family or an individual. It's always nicer to see that impact and what students take back from that, not just what happens for those families, but what the students take back from that. So it's actually really exciting to hear like your story, Kelly. And I know Julia, Marcelo, and I think Caitlin were pulling out insulation underneath one of the houses.
Oh, were
they? It was pretty intense looking, but it was nice to see that their experience was so meaningful to them, which is a big part of what I do here. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the biggest moment for me.
Do you have like any memories of Sandy Hook, like when you were younger growing up, of how like important it is to you?
Yeah, I actually, growing up, we would either go to Sandy Hook when we went to the beach, or we would go to Other Beach State Park. So, and Sandy Hook was closer, so Seabright in that area, they're all much, much closer up the parkway, so it was a lot easier. Just get off at 130, what is it, 135, 137? I can't remember. No, 107? 117.
I'm not.
I'm confusing myself because
Cause
whatever
like
exit Hazlitt is on the Parkway.
because like I'm from
17.
South Jersey, so I came into this day of service as a complete outsider, taking in everything around me, and literally I'm fascinated by everything that we're doing. Though most of the other Bonner leaders, majority of them, are affiliated with the Sandy Hook area, and it has very impactful memories, powerful stories behind the history.
Oh yeah, and I think what I was trying to say is we went to Sandy Hook more often when I was a kid, and just hearing the stories and speaking with some of the community members and seeing how the actual line of sand on the beach had changed from the force of all those waves and everything that, all those things that had happened during that day and a half time frame when Sandy really just smacked the East Coast. It's really sad to see that because, you know, you do have really fond memories and your memories are always much more, you know, pink, rosy tinted than anything. So it makes it even that much more stark, that much more alarming to see the changes. But it was also nice to see that there were other groups like ours who were going down and had the same memories and the same, I guess you could say collective memory of what they remember their community being and trying to get it back to where it was.
Yeah, because literally when Sandy happened, I had no knowledge of it. I didn't know like what was going on because I'd grown up in an area, growing up in South Jersey in one of like the most secluded areas, away from water. Like I felt safe all the time.
Yep.
But like, you were, I believe, talking to some of the eco members as well. What were you talking to them about while we were working?
You mean when we were in, I think actually all of our eco members, except for maybe 2 or 3, were actually doing the rock moving portion from the parking lot. And I guess the general conversation that day was just why we were there, what we were doing, why we were doing that particular project. And I think that was kind of like the general feeling for that whole day, was that we really wanted to know why we were there and why we were making impact, why did we choose this project. So me having been one half of the people who decided the project we would do, I had this foreknowledge, but they didn't. So when we went down there, they had no idea what they would be doing as part of this community cleanup. I had a general idea because I'm more familiar with what cleanups look like than I think some other volunteers are. But I think that's what they really wanted to know the most, was they really wanted to know why we were there and if it was going to have an impact on that community. I think we wish we'd seen more community members who'd come out and really talked with us. But it was still good to know that at least we were doing something that needed to be done.
Right.
So.
Like, do you wish that more, like, what would you say would be a good way to probably get the word out more about just, like, having the surrounding community become involved with this? Because, like, all the different Bonner leaders, they were stationed at different locations to help out, including myself. But, like, is there any, like, any suggestions that, like, you would, like, say of how to get the word out more about, like, more community involvement?
I think social media is, we talk about it all the time, but it truly is one of the easiest ways, especially when we're trying to engage the younger generation in volunteer service. and trying to tap into that huge force. These are all college students or high school students that, you know, they really are this giant force of just volunteers, potential volunteers that you can really use to get them involved in Sandy relief and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think social media, because a lot of the younger generation is really into that kind of online, quick Twitter, Facebook, the pictures, all of those things. I do think, in my experience, social media has been the best way at actually getting the word out. I don't know if you've seen anything from Occupy Sandy, Occupy New Jersey, anything like that. They send out emails all the time, and they're very connected. Those emails and the emailing lists are very connected to their social media. So the social media gets thousands and thousands of likes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how these grassroots, I think, campaigns are beginning to grow a lot now,
Mm-hmm.
is by using social media. And I think that's one of the quickest ways for it to get out to everybody. And I think that would be the easiest way also, or one of the most convenient ways to get people engaged in the actual process itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the most relevant connection, I would say, communication vehicle between this younger generation of huge generation of potential volunteers and the movement itself. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. So also, what about like hearing personal stories or testimonies from people such as yourself that were there, or like, do you feel like they would be more motivated to participate?
Completely. I think pictures and videos are definitely the way to go. Anytime that, or I think anyone, and this applies to anyone, anytime someone looks at a video where volunteers are actually doing something like going down to the shore and helping out, or they're telling their own testimony about the things that they've done as volunteers, I think that makes it a lot more real to people. It's not so static. It's not just like, here's this information up online. You know, people keep saying over and over again, you should get involved in service. You should help with the Sandy relief efforts. You should do this, you should do this. And after a while, I think people become inured to it and they stop listening. But when you have pictures and videos and hearing personal stories through those mediums and seeing what those people are doing, seeing the before and the after, so to speak, it shows you that you can make a difference too, that you can really be that person in the story, that you could really be the next volunteer who's telling their own story via, you know, video.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's super important to share personal stories for anything, not just for MLK Day or for Sandy Relief. It's very important for people to hear those personal stories, because otherwise I think that it just doesn't sink in to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for sharing your
Oh, you're welcome.
story with us today, Beth.
You're welcome.